So what's up people and welcome to the chapter 66 discussion of Kaiju number 8 or Kaiju 8号. So chapter 66 came out a few days ago, and as always I will leave a link to this chapter that's currently being shown on the publisher's official website, Manga Plus, for free to the North American audience. So if you're interested, go take a look at it before they pull this chapter back. Now chapter 66, I really enjoyed chapter 66. This was what I was expecting a training arc sort of chapter to be. And it was really nice to see it focused on the main character once again. And the way they wrote this chapter, I think was really, really good. Now this chapter starts out in a shrine of all places. And when Kafka asks Hoshina why they were there, Hoshina explains to Kafka that this is Ryune's shrine. And through the explanation, we really start understanding the world for which this story takes place. I originally thought that this story was somewhat parallel to our real world, with the exception of the recent appearance of these monsters or kaijus. But what we find out is that this world, though parallel, has always had monsters coming out throughout history, at least a few hundred years back. And Vice Commander Hoshina discusses some of the history with regards to the monsters and the people who battled them back then. And of course, in the past, there was no technology, there were no battle suits or these high-class weapons. And so it was basically the samurai against these huge monsters. And because of that, we find out that the people who battled these monsters really risked their lives because the majority of them got killed due to the overwhelming difference between the powers that the humans had and the monsters. And yet the battle continued to go on, and the shrine is of course there in memory of all those people who gave their lives to protect humanity. And so Hoshina says that it's probably the best place for them to do the training. And with that, he immediately tells Kafka to start fighting him. Now, Hoshina has taken off his weapons and his battle suit, and he's basically there in just plain clothes, and informed Kafka that this will be a hand-to-hand combat. No battle suits, no weapons, just the sheer core fighting power of each individual. And with that, the battle begins, or the training begins, and Kafka immediately gets outpowered by Hoshina. It's not even a close battle, and Kafka immediately realizes his lack of capability. And this brings back his feeling of helplessness that he had prior to receiving Monster 8's powers, and he feels that he hasn't really progressed since that time, aside from the monster powers. And yet, it is at this time that Commander Hoshina surprisingly mentions just how much Kafka has improved from the past. And this chapter was really good, not just because it came back to the main character, but it really brought out a really good side of Vice Commander Hoshina. After reading chapter 66, I really started liking Vice Commander Hoshina even more. For he did recognize the development that Kafka had, and yet at the same time immediately started taking him down and said, but it's not good enough. And the combination of the respect to Kafka as well as making him understand that he still needs to grow much stronger was a really good way of representing this character. A lot of times characters are shown either as overly supportive or overly abusive. And in this case, Hoshina doesn't pull any punches and he beats the crap out of Kafka, but at the same time he does recognize the efforts that Kafka has done and gives him credit for that. And that really made me like Hoshina a lot because of his objectiveness to the situation. And the other thing I really liked about this chapter was the explanation that Vice Commander Hoshina gave with regards to how they were fighting hand-to-hand combat. No weapons, no battle suits. He basically said that since Kafka can no longer turn into monster number 8 without sacrificing himself, and he was never able to utilize the strength of the battlesuit, there was no point in fighting using the suit or the armor. What Kafka needed to do was to be able to improve his core fighting skills. And so by fighting using hand-to-hand, that gave Kafka the ability to improve on the very foundation of his fighting skills. And it turns out to be absolutely useful for the second explanation that Vice Commander Hoshina stated, which was since his core fighting skills were so low, he used his Monster 8 capabilities as a crutch. And because his Monster 8 capabilities were so powerful, he never really focused back on trying to improve his core power. What he kept on doing is exploiting the power that Monster number 8 gave him. And now that he is unable to transform without sacrificing himself, he needed to be able to strengthen his core power. So all of this explanation makes perfect sense. And what it also does is it gives a good foreshadowing of how Kafka will become stronger. Sure, he will be better without any armor or weapons because his core fighting skill will improve. But then, when you augment that with his battle suits, and potentially even with his Monster number 8 powers, the combined capabilities between the augmented power and his core power should significantly improve his fighting strength. And so this creates a foundation for how Kafka will be improving in the future. And so chapter 66 gave a really good understanding of how the rest of the training arc will proceed. And it was a really good way to open Kafka's training. Now, one thing I think a lot of readers were surprised at was the ending. When Kafka, after finishing his training, notices that mysterious character in the shrine. And I think everybody asked the question, who the heck is that? And although there are many speculations, such as, is that a previous monster? Is that a spirit of a previous warrior? I'm going to keep this open because I really have no idea. But it does open up a question as to what is going to happen with regards to this character and potentially the character's interaction with Kafka. And how does it relate to his training arc? So that is something that I will be looking forward to in the future chapters, and hopefully we'll get a little bit of clarity in chapter 67. And once that comes out, I'll bring out another video and hope you join me at that time. But that is the chapter 66 discussion for Kaiju number 8. What you think about it? How do you feel Kafka's training is going? Any comments that you can provide will be greatly appreciated. So thank you very much for listening. And until the next episode, happy manga reading. And as always, jaya nice day, everyone.